Hello all. It is, I believe, the 3rd of December, 2023. It's Sunday. In my shed, got my little heater going here, trying it out. It's not that cold outside, but I thought it'd be a good thing to work in the shed today since it's raining outside today. I'm going to attempt to replace the universal joints on my drive shaft. I got 4 new Moog U-joints that I picked up at Advanced Auto Parts yesterday. Another one of those rare things where you can actually get things locally still for my old car. I also received from Amazon some special little cleaning tools from when I do the carburetor rebuild at some point here in the future. I also had ordered from them a can of carb cleaner, cans with the little cage in that you dip parts in. Well, it came to me yesterday, but the can was empty and it obviously had leaked and whatnot. So sometimes dealing with Amazon doesn't always go that smoothly or with shipping. So I'll have to return that empty can and they're shipping me another one. Maybe this one will arrive with the carb cleaner actually in the can like it's supposed to be. So I'm hoping to utilize this bench vise I have on my small little vise here on my bench to help me with the U-joints. I can't find my snap ring pliers. I think they're probably at the shop. That's the only bad thing about splitting my work between 2 locations. But I think I'll be able to get those snap rings off anyway, even with just regular needle nose pliers. So we're going to see how this goes. And if it doesn't go well, that's okay. It doesn't stop me from swapping the engine or transmission tomorrow. I just called the tow company as well and arranged for them to be here at 8 in the morning to get that started. So we'll see how this goes. All right, I'm zoomed in a little bit here on the first joint, the first CV joint. I'm going to attempt to take apart here. I know viewers of this video know that CV stands for constant velocity. For whatever reason, Lincoln back in the 60s and well into the 70s, yeah, had used this type of setup on the drive shafts. Very common back then. So I'm just going to start by starting to remove the retaining clips here. Hopefully this comes out relatively easy. We'll see. This is the front of the drive shaft. There we go. There's one out. And I'm hoping that the vise will help me to push these apart using a socket or something that I can put in the hole and push it to one side or whatever. Otherwise, I might have to use a C-clamp or something like that. Not really sure yet. It's been a while since I've done one of these, but it is doable. All right, so here's my first attempt. I've gotten all the clips taken out now. So I'm going to use an oversized socket that's big enough for the cap on the one fourth of the U-joint to come out into while I push it through from the other side. Just kind of force out the caps one at a time, give myself enough room to take it apart. So we'll see if this works or not. All right, I've managed to get one cap off so far. I had to use vice grips to grab a hold of the end of it as it was sticking out, just enough to grab it and kind of work it out. So I got one off. So now I'm going to push it back in the other way and hopefully get that cap here to come out the other side. So I'll have the first part of it done. I tried moving this down here, and man, that baby is tight. She wouldn't move either direction. So uh, I'm sure I don't have the proper tools, but I'll keep at it. Just a quick illustration of the next step I'm having to take. I was finally able to get all the caps off of one end right here, but I could not get the vise or the C-clamp or anything to budge the ones closer in. So I set it on the ground here with a big socket underneath for this cap to fall into, and using a good fitting socket right there. And I just banged on it with a sledgehammer, and that actually worked. That actually got it free. So sometimes you got to take a sledgehammer to things. All right, I finally got this CV joint completely apart. It was a pain in the butt. Um, I took pictures too before I completely took it apart so I could remember how to put it back together, because I'm never good at remembering things like that. The U-joints were dry. I mean, there's no grease at all left in them, so this definitely, and there were no grease fittings either on these old U-joints, so there's no way they could have been lubricated, so I'm glad I am replacing these. My only concern right now is this center piece. I don't remember what you call it. There's a name for it at the center of the yoke, or the CV joint, I'm sorry. Um, it looks like it's actually in pretty good shape. I mean, it's not binding, it's moving freely here like it should. My only concern is inside are a bunch of needle bearings, and several of them have fallen. And it's always such a pain dealing with those. You got to carefully get them all back in place. I don't know if I could have left them on that shaft or not. Maybe I could have, and I wouldn't be dealing with this, but Obviously, it also needs to be greased in there. There is a Zerk fitting right there. I need to get a fitting for my grease gun for that kind of fitting so I can grease that. So I'm going to decide, I'm going to attempt to get the needle bearings back in place and see if I can just kind of leave them on that shaft for now. I might even be able to leave them there as I'm reassembling with the new U-joints. I don't know yet. But I tell you, dealing with these CV joints is such a pain. But I did get it apart, so sometimes you really got to be careful and play detective and whatnot. I was working, I need to find the name of this, and I don't remember what to call it, but anyway, I looked inside here. There were several needle bearings that were laying on their sides, so I went inside and got a dental tool and a pair of tweezers so I could grab them and put them back in place. But there was still a gap. There was one missing, and I couldn't find it anywhere. And I happened to look at one of the end caps from the U joints, and it was in there. Somehow, I guess I must have picked up what I thought was a loose needle bearing from a U joint and just stuck it in there instead. So I can tell the difference because here they are right here. They're You can eyeball it barely, but the one on the left is the one that goes in that center part of the CV joint, that center yoke. I think it's called the centering yoke. That one on the left is the one that I was missing. The one on the right is a little bit thicker and a little bit shorter. Those are the ones that came out of the U joints. So I'm lucky that I found it. Otherwise, I probably would have been forced to buy another one of those. And they're not cheap. They're like 70, 80, 90 bucks, something like that. But it seems to be in good shape. So after I get that last needle bearing in place, I'm going to fill it up with grease and then just slide it back on the little shaft there. Hopefully it'll stay while I'm putting the other U joints in, the new U joints. I'm just showing that I just filled up that hole there with grease for my grease gun. It has the benefit of holding the needle bearings in place, and also it needed to be greased anyway. That way I don't have to mess with that Zerk fitting. Now I'm going to put it back on the shaft. Let me see what happens here. Hopefully this will work and they won't fall off or something in the process. So here's the little shaft. There's a spring there too, which I didn't know about, but it's back in place. So here we go. Okay, it looks like it's working. I think I'll have to work on that separately. All right, I chose to use a colorful zip tie holding that on there because I'm deathly afraid of that thing falling off and then my needle bearings coming out again. So I'm just going to use that as a temporary measure while I'm working on getting the new U joints installed. Now I'm beginning to question my sanity of doing this job myself. I just remembered that you can't install new U joints until you pull all the end caps off, because you have to have them off in order to install them in the tight spaces, and then you press them back in place. And if you're not careful, those needle bearings inside there will come loose. And I've had problems with that in the past, so I got to be really careful. Also, with the grease fitting, you need to remember to face it the correct way so that you can have access to it once it's fully installed. And I believe in the back one here, I need to face it toward the back as opposed to facing it toward the front. I think that'll make it easier to reach it, so that's how I'm going to face that. And now I'm going to carefully remove the caps, and if I need to, I'll put more grease in there too to keep those needle bearings in place. All right, I've got my first cap pressed in far enough with my C-clamp and everything. I can actually put my first new clamp in, so I'm going to put that in. As before, getting these out on the sides down here, that C-clamp is not strong enough to pull it in, so I may have to use my sledgehammer again to insert those caps on that part, which I really don't want to do with a new U-joint, but not sure what else I can do, so we'll see what happens. All right, I'm wrapping it up for the day. I was not able to finish rebuilding this CV joint simply because I don't have a vise that has jaws wide enough, a bench vise, to squeeze those caps back on. I'm not going to take a sledgehammer to a brand new U-joint. I just don't think that would work too well. It's too much of a risk. So what I'm going to do is put the drive shaft in the trunk of my project car, and then when it gets towed to Shamrock Automotive on Monday, I'll ask if I can borrow a bench vise and just press those caps back together. And while I'm there, I might just disassemble the rear one too and get started on putting that one together and finish it up when I get back home. So, oh well, I won't be putting it in the car tomorrow, but that's all right. I mean, as far as installing it with the transmission and all that. That's it for the day. I'm ready to have the car towed over to the shop tomorrow morning. So see you then.